Everyone says that communication is important in marriage, but no one ever teaches you how to communicate. So stay tuned, because in this episode, we're going to share the 3 best tips for communication that we've seen transform marriages. Coming up next.
We're Katie and Drew Taylor, and we are passionate about helping you reach new heights in your faith, in your marriage. And this series specifically, we're going to be breaking down tools and resources to really transform your family culture to be faithful. And so if you find value in this video, make sure to subscribe to keep getting these resources. I have a master's in marriage and family counseling. Drew has one in theology. And through our 10 years of marriage, we provide the experiences of journeying with others. So for this week, that's going to be communication.
Yeah.
Which they always say communication is key, but it's just that. How do we actually do this? And what are some ideas that we have seen that are unique, that have had substantial impact in our relationship and in others that we've gotten to journey with?
Our first tool is going to be to have a code word to break down barriers. So whenever we don't see eye to eye on things, the one thing that I will say to Katie is going to be, can I talk to best friend Katie? And that's our code word to say, look, I really need to say something. I really need to break through so that we can work through this constructively. But there's so much going on. There's a lot of emotion. Tensions are high. And so I need to talk to my best friend right now. And for some reason, that always works for us.
I think this is a critical aspect of when you are in an argument, when you are in a disagreement, emotions are flaring and you're no longer listening. And so you're saying something, they're saying something, and 9 times out of 10, it might be the same thing. You might actually be somewhat close to the same page or be able to respect your partner's views if you could actually listen. And so often, what it is it's breaking down the barrier, because when I see you as the opponent and we're in a fight, then you've become the bad guy and I have built up barriers of self-protection and I'm no longer listening. Mm-hmm. And so what this allows is for me to remember, oh yeah, we're on the same team. We're not enemies. We aren't against each other. We have the same goal to have an incredible marriage, to raise our kids, to grow in the faith, to be sanctified, to allow this to whatever we're disagreeing on, it is to be better for our marriage in the end. And so when he is able to look at me and say, I need to talk to my best friend, there is an ability for me to go, oh yeah, I am your best friend. Mm-hmm. Let's come back.
And when I ask that, so this is kind of how this goes practically. So we'll be talking and then I will say, can I talk to best friend Katie for a second? And if she says no, then I say, okay. But most of the time she says yes. And then I say, okay, it's really hard when Katie, and I talk about Katie almost as this, she's like another person but I'm just talking to my best friend. And I'm like, man, it's really hard when Katie does this or says this because it just puts a lot on me or however I'm feeling. So it just helps me put into words kind of what's going on right now in this almost non-threatening way where I know I can be open with that and that we're not going to violate best friend Katie or best friend Drew rules.
Yeah. And I think that goes into having a script to be able to work through those hard moments. And so in our forgiveness video, we talked about the script of, I am feeling this way and I'm projecting this story onto this situation. Yeah. And so when I'm able to look at him and go, I am feeling this way because you're doing this, is that at all what you are meaning to do? Mm-hmm. Is that actually your intention? 99% of the time, that is not the case. Yeah. And so then we are able to, again, really see the good of the other, which is going to be point number 2.
So tool number 2 is going to be always assume the best of your spouse. And this can be really, really hard, but I promise you this is worth it and it transforms marriages. Mm-hmm. Because it's so easy as we are, let's say I'm like taking one of the kids to the bathroom and it's bedtime and all of a sudden everyone's crying and I look around and I can't find Katie. There's a couple different options that I have. I could say, man, like, where is she? She's probably off, just relaxing while I've got these crazy kids and stuff. And then inevitably, whenever I start thinking those thoughts, she comes around the corner and she's got the toothbrushes ready. Like she was off doing something else to prepare the kids for bedtime. And so it's so important that you always assume the best of your spouse.
Mm-hmm. And I think these are the narratives that we tell ourselves because we allow the stories in our mind to build our reality. And so when I'm constantly saying like, he really isn't helpful, he really isn't on my team, he really doesn't see what I do, he doesn't value me, he doesn't love me, he doesn't actually want our marriage to thrive. And those stories start building, and I'm able to put experiences that are true into that line of thought and start building a case against him. And when I do that, I have created a rift of trust. And now that cognitive narrative is just building. And everything is a confirmation because we have that natural confirmation bias. Like every little thing you do is then able to feed into that story, building into a brokenness. And one of the things that when Drew finished his master's in theology, its focus is in moral theology. And he really said, to summarize it in one sentence, is that everyone is trying to do what they think is best. And that really helped me see not only the world, but also just in our relationship, that what Drew is doing in that moment, he thinks is best for our family. I might disagree, but when I'm able to acknowledge that he isn't doing it from a place of evil spite or just hatred, he's doing it because he thinks that that will be what will most help our family moving forward.
Yeah. So give it a try. Let us know what you think. But it is, it's so important that you just assume the best of your spouse. And then if your expectations don't align, then you can go back to best friend Katie or best friend Drew and have a conversation about how that didn't work out super well or how that made the night really terrible, whatever it was.
Yeah. And if you maybe are doing things to hurt the other person, maybe the forgiveness video that we did is an important one for you to go back to really evaluate your anger and really evaluate how you can grow in compassion and forgiveness right here in your marriage to heal that so that they are actually having your best interest in mind in all that they're doing. But for communication, number 3, clarity is critical.
So what do we mean by that? During flying, since I'm a pilot, when we're doing missions in fighter jets, the brief before you go fly is so important. And the reason why that's so important is that you give this shared mental model to the other guys that are flying with you so that you can all go do the mission together and succeed. And so many times I've found that even in our marriage, Katie will tell me something or request something for me to do. I will try to execute that to the best of my ability. And then it turns out what I tried to do or what I thought she had wanted me to do was not actually even close to anything that she wanted me to do.
Yeah. The reality is we don't always have a shared mental model, especially as we begin our marriage. Our brains are different. They're chemically, structurally different as men and women. And so looking at just that, then we have different family of origins. Yeah. And so we come from a different mental model. We then bring in our different temperaments, our different love languages, the way that we think communication works. And then we realize that that's not actually getting my point across, or we're not sharing or asking the right questions. And so one of the things that we will build upon on this is expectations are premeditated resentment. And often I'm holding an expectation in my mind that I have not clearly communicated.
Or you don't even know that you have.
And then I'm angry about it because he's not meeting it. And then I'm assuming that he's not doing what's in the best interest of me. And then I'm building barriers, and they're really hard to break through. And so it all kind of circles back in this communication loop that we get stuck in that's not actually communication at all. That really comes back to how do we more clearly clarify our expectations, what we're trying to say to each other.
So to recap, our 3 biggest tools for communication are going to be have a code word to break down barriers. Ours is, can I talk to best friend Katie or best friend Drew? The second is going to be assume the best of the other person. And then the third is going to be clarity is critical.
And with these, I think it's important to remember that we believe in a growth mindset. So it's not that your marriage is not functioning in communication or that you're such a huge failure. It's that each of us has an opportunity to grow just a little bit so that our marriages become a place of pure joy and peace. That they are not just for sanctification, but a place where we are actually able to find community internally to each other. And so that, like, we want your marriage to be on fire. And so share this video with your spouse.
Share it with best friend spouse.
But seriously, share it with a friend and know that we are praying for your marriages. Please comment below if you have any questions about marriage and family, if there's anything that really stuck out here or tools that you've seen really help in your marriage, in your communication, so that we can share those with others and that we can be praying for you and your marriage by name. We look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, God bless.